tanga te rungaroa nānane ngā mea kotoa I hanga. Te kingi, te tuheitia, me te whānui, noho mai rā, noho mai. Ka huri nei au, karangatu I oku tīpuna, te koto mai ngā hau e whā o moana niwa, nui akiwa, te koto mai. Ka mihi nei oku rangatira, noho mai rā, ki tēnei mai tai malie and te whao malo. Engari, I oku kaiwhakapo tumu ake, me te oku mahi e PhD tērā kia Professor Ngaruawahia Kotuku, te awa Kotuku, and Professor Linda Nikora. Tēnā tātou, kia ora rā. Just want to acknowledge it's actually a privilege to be here today, and just giving acknowledgement to my elders that are here who spoke earlier today, to e whionga ia tai malie and e whionga ia te whao I malo. It's an honour to share the stage with them, and also just acknowledging my supervisors of my doctoral work that helped me get through those tumultuous years of researching. So Professor Ngaruawahia and Professor Nikora, and so thank you. So that's my topic. This is about my postdoctoral work. This is Tamati. In 1997, I was working as a youth worker for the Pacific Island Heartbeat of the National Heart Foundation, and that's when I began to get into youth work at the time. I was in Auckland and did a bit of work there, and then moved back down to Hamilton. And so Tamati was around 14 years old when he joined the skateboarding club that I sort of put together for young people that we were working with at the time. So I was working as a youth worker for the Hamilton City Council, and at that stage the City Council had sort of 5 regions or sort of divided up the city, and I was working as a youth worker for Hamilton South area. Tamati could be any young man that is amongst our whanaunga, our aingas. Quite a shy young boy, but also very cheeky at times, and loved life. But Tamati committed suicide at around that age. Now, I heard the story, and afterwards, and Tamati had a fight with his girlfriend. And so he wanted to show her and everyone else that, he was angry. And so he went and got drunk and decided to hang himself in the garage. It came out not very long after that, when I went to one of the youth meetings for the city, that Tamati had actually been part of a number of organisations. He came through Child, Youth and Family. He was, part of the school that he was at that time was around Melville High School. And, he was part of my skateboarding club. And so the question that I had in my mind is, how did he actually slip through? And the other question that I thought about is, is what was he thinking about? where was his support network at that time? And it got me to the stage when I thought I actually did not have the skills to deal with what was going on in terms of picking up what Tamati may be going through, or other young people that are sort of going through similar situations. So that resulted in me deciding I needed to get some counselling skills. And that projected me into the counselling arena when I did my Masters in Counselling, as a way of wanting to understand, but also not just understanding, but being equipped with the ability to be able to work in this. So I wrote a paper as part of my research work there called Fiola, I Want to Live. And this was around the cry that a lot of young people going through these situations are going through, in terms of they want to escape the pain of what they're going through, and we heard earlier about the love relationships, but don't know how. So I wanted to learn how to deal with this. So I trained as a counsellor, and then one of my doctoral work was looking and examining grieving from Samoan men's perspective, in particular, after having done some work with the tsunami and acknowledging the great work that Family Therapy Centre from Lower Hutt did as well, as part of that whole psychosocial network that we did back in the day. So for this research, I want to understand, after doing that sort of research with Samoan men in particular in grieving practices, I want to go back to my passion, which is working with young people. And so my postdoctoral research is really examining the connections between these sort of relational times from 18 to 25 and mental health. And so suicide sort of falls within that category as well. So one of the things I wanted to find out is, one of my questions is, and often one of the questions that is asked is, what are they thinking? What is going through their heads? So I thought I'd better have a look at the brain and see how the brain sort of works. And so when we look at generally in terms of the brain, now I'm not a neuroscientist, so this is internet research. So I know I'm talking to academics and so on, but this is internet research. And so we know that the frontal cortex is, this area part here, it's like the CEO. And it plans and organizes things, and that's the part that's also responsible for mature decision making. And I considered that a little bit, and then the next part is creativity, which is the corpus callosum. I don't even know what these terms are, but which is this next part here, and that's like, deals with the creativity side and problem solving. And then the other part here is the coordinator part. So I was just looking at this because I wanted to understand. And so this is sort of generally for adults. And I said, well, what's it like for teenagers or adolescents? So let's have a look. This is a bit like, so one of the things I've learned so far as I sort of look at this is that a lot of teenagers actually sack the CEO. So there's like, because who needs one anyway? It's for the oldies. CEO is someone who takes care of all that stuff. Is when you're over 25 and you're down over the hill. That's when you need a CEO. But in case you might need one, there's a little thing here called the judgment gland, just in case you might need to, have something there, just in case. And the other thing I found out is this whole area here is called the pleasure, high pleasure reward area, in which, for many young people, the whole idea of loving and disdain for parents and also rewards, particularly money, because they don't have any. So just in case, they sort of think about that I'm the centre of the world. So we think about a lot of issues around their emotions, the way they feel about stuff. It's all about me. So I was just looking at some of the key things that come out, the rebellion centre, and just in case we want some more ways of dealing with it. There's a Super Turbo Rebellion Centre, and then the whole area of emotions. I'm really interested in that because I want to know, how do they make sense of that? What were they thinking? One of the things I sort of also learned is that the brain goes through a time of pruning. So when you say to your kids, have you lost your mind? Actually, there is biological evidence that they do lose half of their minds. Because the pruning process happens around that adolescent time of life in which half of their brain is actually taken back. But what they tend to work on is maintained over time. So the things they're good at, sports and so on, is there. So I think, well, what does that have to do with my study? And I think there's heaps. So let's look at my study and then let's make some of the connections. From a research perspective, a lot has been written around about sexual practices, sexual health status of young people. But there's a study in Samoa that's just been released by Walsh and colleagues earlier this year that sort of looks at the prevalence of chlamydia infections with women around 18 to 29. And they found that particularly around the age of 18 to 24, there was a high rate of multiple partners. So we know that sort of things happen, and that's the area where there's a lot of experimentations, there's a lot of having a go, there's a lot of alcohol involved and so on. But, so there's evidence of that being there, but we obviously don't know what are some of the slipperage that involves in these decision makings over that period of time. And that's what I'm interested in, is really some of the key questions is, how do Pacific people, particularly young men, make good relationships? Where do they get the information from about the constitution of personal and intimate relationships, whether from family, from culture, from religion, from education, from media, or from personal experiences? How do they get themselves into good relationships and out of bad ones? What sort of help might they need, and what sort of experiences might they enlist to help them make these sort of processes? So one of the things I found is there's a significant gap in some of the published research on young Pasifika males. So one of the things I thought, it would be really cool to get a Pacific brain, and see what it's like. With all the stuff that we've got to go through, like obligation, and wha'alavelave, and church, and hiding your relationships from your parents, and all that sort of stuff, It'll be really interesting to find out what this young adult's brain is sort of going through. So I think that's part of my research is I'm going to make up one of those at the end and present it and come back and say, hey, this is what we look like, I think. So here's my proposition, or some of the background of my research. Now, my research also is partly because I love this illustration that Dr. Sione Waka, who's a psychiatric nurse, said, that in terms of Tongan, looking at Tongan mental health, is some of the participants came up and said, mental health for Tongan people, they see it as a cracked marble, or a propeller that's lost one wing. And I thought, cracked marble, I used to play marbles, so I like marbles. So I think, when cracked marbles, no one really wants one of those, so you want the nice shiny one. So I thought, I look at my life and I thought, yes, I went through a time of being cracked up, because I didn't have a girlfriend at my adolescent years, so I was really stressed out, going through mental health myself, and then I got a girlfriend, and then I really got stressed out. And then I got kids, and that's sort of the whole thing. So this is about me looking at myself, and then sort of getting other people off. The other thing I wanted to do was look at the New Zealand cohort, so looking at universities, particularly tertiary institutions, and then also the Pacific. Now, I've got Samoa, Tonga and Fiji because it's pretty cold in the Waikato, I don't want a holiday. So this is one cheap way of getting a good holiday is to do research overseas. So I thought I'll just get that out there so next time I don't have to explain it. So I've got some guiding questions here. What constitutes healthy, intimate partner relationships among male Pacific tertiary students? When they're going through these relationships, as well as the whole idea of success, this strong sense of being successful education, because that's why our parents came to New Zealand, is for us to have better education so that we can provide the family with the economy. And so what constitutes to their sense of relationship with the culture and so on? So, and there's the proposition, is to take up to 40 in-depth interviews and do a 12 months. So I'm actually in the first 6 months of the study, and just actually last week I did my first interview in Hamilton. So it's, I could provide some preliminary findings, but I won't at this stage. I'll just leave you to savor over it, and then I'll get another invitation to come back and to do some more presentation of that. So now what does this have to do with suicide prevention? Now, there's a Samoan proverb that says, "O le te leo sulu, e mawai se whingota." Many hands make light work. So it means that we all have to have our part. And my part in this, us gaining some understanding, is providing some information around it. And my strength does not come from me alone, but from many. So I want to acknowledge the work of Leva, and it was through Leva's invitation for me to be part of today, and acknowledge Dr. Jared from Leva here, and Monique, certainly part of championing that course, and one of the works that they're doing is this whole area around suicide prevention. So that's there, that's what they do, and that's my references, and I think that's it for today. Thank you very much. Right on.
We have plenty of time for questions. Or for questions. Yes,
I was just going to say, just here, I went to a session with a woman from, I think it was Harvard University, who was doing some stuff on adolescent brains and stuff like that. She started her session off with, she showed a building with these kids jumping off the roof. And she said, how many of you in the audience would have asked your kids, what were you thinking at the time? And she said, wrong question. She said, you had to ask them what were they feeling at the time, because they're not thinking what you're thinking. So, good work.
And I think along that work, generally it's been perceived that we are thinking people who feel. With teenagers, they're feeling people who sometimes think, most of the time not think. And if you saw that little, that diagram I had, their immunity to peer pressure is very, very tiny. Yet their desire for acceptance by peers is very, very large. So we've got this sort of challenge to help them through. And one of the things that sort of come out is get them to 25. Just help them through.
Are you picking this? Actually, as Bryon was speaking, I was turning to Ngaruawahia, and I was saying to her, are you responsible for this? I know who to hold accountable for this. But anyway, look, you're bringing out some. What really came to us was your heart and your mind are working together, and your physicality is working together in this. So it will be very interesting, Bryon, how do we integrate in our language our heart and our feeling and our physicality in this? And what we are also having to be careful of in our research is very, very careful in not laying the blame at our cultural steps and saying, wow, that is too much part of the habit, or too much of this and too much, and not analyzing it carefully so we are not rushed into that. It'd be great to have these conversations with you, Warren. We look forward to those conversations. Not that our cultures are free of blame, but to say we need some of these things to be analyzed much more carefully than our first glance. So it's a longer conversation. But let me say that each of our cultures, hopefully we're not stepping on your toes by having some big laughs during a very serious conversation about suicide. But this is what you are seeing now is part of Maria's responsibility and why Māori's responsibility for creating such a person like this who says to us like, my friends, in Samoan, humor and seriousness are held together. So, in mourning someone who has moved on through suicide, there are many stories that I told that are hilarious. One of the things we ask at that time is, whose body was it that that person has just decided to end? And then there are many recollections of the answer to that question. Whose body is it that that person just ended? Well, it so happens it's the mother's family's body, it's the father's family's body, it's everybody's body. But what we cannot take away is that body had been frozen in pain for quite some time. And thus the decision to end. So, Byron, thank you very much for your sharing today. We hope to have longer conversations and to have much more Malie-type brains on that screen. Okay, thank you.